This is BRICS Global Television Network's Daily Roundup. We begin with the headlines. A country in mourning. Iran President Ibrahim Raisi dies in a helicopter crash. Saudi Arabia's King Salman admitted to hospital. An activist from India's governing party shot and killed. And heavyweight boxer Tyson Fury undecided on a rematch. Hello, I'm Juliet Newell. World leaders are extending their condolences following the death of President Ibrahim Raisi. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi was confirmed dead earlier today after his crashed helicopter was found in a fog-shrouded mountain region, sparking mourning in the Islamic Republic. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has ultimate authority in Iran, has declared 5 days of mourning. Vice President Mohammad Mokhbar, 68 years old, will now assume interim duties, after which elections will be held within 50 days. Leaders from BRICS countries have extended their condolences, including Saudi Arabia, where King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman have sent Iran messages of condolence. Russian President Vladimir Putin's remembered Raisi as an outstanding politician and said his death is an irreplaceable loss. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi issued a statement reading, "The President of the Arab Republic of Egypt extends his sincere condolences and sympathy to the brotherly Iranian people and prays that the deceased Iranian president and the departed may rest in God Almighty's mercy." Indian President Narendra Modi posted a message on X, "My heartfelt condolences to his family and the people of Iran. India stands with Iran in this time of sorrow." Chinese President Xi Jinping also added his voice, expressing his condolences, as well as the United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, who posted this on X. "I extend my deepest condolences to the Iranian government and people over the passing of President Ibrahim Raisi, Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian, and those accompanying them following a tragic accident. We pray that God grants them eternal rest, and we extend our heartfelt sympathies to their families." United Arab Emirates Prime Minister Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum also posted on X, extending his condolences. And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says the country mourns with the people of Iran. On the line now is Tembisa Fakude. He is a research fellow of Africa-Asia Dialogue and former bureau chief at Al Jazeera Network. Hi, how are you doing?
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, what is the way forward now in Iran? Who takes over from the late Ibrahim Raisi?
Well, we know that the vice president was supposed to take over before, I think after 50 days, we're going to have the elections. But at the moment, we're all waiting for the statement from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to make that announcement and confirm whether the vice president will be. But that's according to the constitution of Iran. So that's where everybody else is at the moment. I think that's going to happen after the funeral.
What is the situation like in Iran in terms of stability? He hasn't been president for terribly long. So what are the people on the ground feeling and saying at this time?
Well, Iran has got, I mean, even though he was called the president, but it's actually a prime minister because the head of state is the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. That's one. Number two is there's been a very kind of split opinion in Iran regarding the death of Ibrahim Raisi, because, as you know, he was known as a hardliner, and you know, he's also known to have killed or at least sentenced a lot of people while he was still the court judge, sentenced a lot of people to death. So there's a sizable number of people who felt that he was a killer, but there's also a sizable number of Iranians who, at the same time, loved him. So it's that split opinion that we have. But I think at the moment in Iran, there's an element of uncertainty, notwithstanding that there's been the talk of the bad weather condition that has caused this crash. And there are also other people who believe that there must have been some interference with technical, wiring of the aircraft. The others believe, of course, given the context of the conflict in the region at the moment, that Israel might have been involved.
And there's also been talk about the age of the aircraft in the country and whether or not the helicopter was even safe to fly.
Yes, it was even, well, there's that talk whether the circumstances, that is, the weather, permitted for the helicopter to fly. But two, Iran is under sanctions, and these are very old American helicopters that they still use. And because of sanctions, they're not getting proper spare parts for these helicopters. So there is that talk that perhaps there was some technical issues with the helicopter, but the prevailing report at the moment is that this was due to bad weather conditions. Now the question is, why did the pilot allow for the helicopter to take off? There were 3 helicopters, we were told. 2 managed to land safely. Only this one that was carrying Ibrahim Raisi and Husseini Amir Abdullahi was involved in an accident.
And of course, he was the foreign minister. So what does that mean for the country? No foreign minister and no Ibrahim Raisi.
Yes, number 2 and number 3 of the country, both of them died. So the current person basically who runs the show and is ensuring the stability, and by the way, will ensure that this thing doesn't escalate, is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, because it's up to him if it does point fingers to a country or a grouping, accusing them of being involved in this. We might just see escalation. All we know at the moment is that they're calling Ibrahim Raisi a shaheed, which means a martyr, and a martyr is a person who dies in the path of a just war, in the path of fighting for religious purposes.
And lastly, the reaction from other countries, especially the Gulf states, on the passing of Raisi.
Well, the Gulf states have been were the first one to offer assistance. Qatar has been one of those countries, including Saudi Arabia, by the way, because you know that Ibrahim Raisi was involved in the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran after years of tension. So the fences were being mended between Saudi and Iran. So we've had them, forwarding and sending the olive branch and assistance to Iran following this, the tragic death of Ibrahim Raisi. So that has been their reaction. But again, most of them are wary and anxious that this must not escalate into something else that would impact on the region.
Thank you so much, Tembisa Fakude, Research Fellow of Africa-Asia Dialogue and former Bureau Chief of Al Jazeera Network. The head of African Governance and Diplomacy Program at the South African Institute of International Affairs, Stephen Groosd, joins me now in studio. Hi, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Juliet.
What a difficult time for the country, for Iranians and for the region.
Definitely. I think the death of President Raisi was a shock. It was not expected. It was in an accident. And he was a relatively young leader at 63. So I think Iranians, well, they've been divided. There were some who were setting off fireworks when they heard the news, and others have been, in a period of mourning. I'm sure if they haven't yet declared one, there will be a national period of mourning. And I think the Middle East is going to have to adjust to some new realities.
Wasn't he due to succeed the Ayatollah? What now? So
he was slated to. We don't know that it would have definitely happened, but he had the clerical religious background that, the Ayatollah is quite advanced in age, and we thought he was earmarked for that. It wasn't a done deal, but Iran's going to have to do a rethink on its policies, and there'll be a new personality that will be taking the country forward.
He was known for unifying the government and for getting everything to come to him. What does that mean now for BRICS countries?
Well, there was a lot of centralization. Of course, you've got to remember in Iran, there's a higher council that sits above the president. So he really was, yes, he was a statesman, but he was also an administrator and keeping things together. And Raisi had a reputation of being a real tough guy, a real hardliner. Certainly when he was in the Justice Ministry and in the judiciary, he was known for being quite harsh in the punishments meted out. I mean, I think BRICS countries will have to adjust to one of their new members, Iran, now having new leadership. So I think there's always this tension between centralizing and decentralizing. And I think the countries in BRICS are so different that, India has a very decentralized system, as does Russia, as does South Africa. Other countries are more centralized. So we'll have to see what the new leadership of Iran brings into the BRICS. And, they've just joined as of January this year, so they're still settling in. We'll have to wait and see, I think.
Now Iran has lost the foreign minister and Raisi, so there's a bit of a power vacuum, would you say? Does that leave the country open to a power grab?
So the Ayatollah has been very quick today to say everything is in order, be calm. According to the constitution, they have to call an election within 50 days. But the vice
And they've just come out of an election.
So exactly. So the vice president is assuming the post of acting president at the moment, and then he gets together with the speaker of the National Assembly and the head of the judiciary to organize that election. So it's got to be done in 7 weeks' time. But yes, with such an unexpected passing, it does shock the system. I think everybody will be watching out for any power grabs, attempted coups, anything like that. It's really early days. We only had the confirmation this morning, and we're waiting for the dust to settle.
That was the head of African Governance and Diplomacy Program at the South African Institute of International Affairs, Stephen Grusd. Joining us now from Israel, Idan Ronen. He's a journalist and Middle East researcher. What do you believe will be the impact on Israel-Iran relations as a result of the president's death?
Not too much of a difference. I think whatever was will be. We have to keep in mind that the death of President Raisi doesn't necessarily change much because he isn't the supreme leader. We have a supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and he's basically the absolute ruler. So the policy of Iran, as it always was, is to take over not only Israel, is to take over the entire Middle East, to take over the Sunni Muslim states. They have already occupied Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. And I think they will continue with or without President, or should we say late President Raisi.
Do you anticipate accusations that Israel was behind it?
Well, conspiracies just running high. We can never catch up with all these conspiracy theories. Absolutely. However, it is too early to tell. We're not sure yet. And I'm sure that even if indeed Mossad or anybody else by Israel was behind that, and it was not just a natural disaster, but rather an assassination attempt, I'm not sure we will have any available information about that. Because Mossad's tricks are very clear to remain discreet for the best of their ability. So we don't have much else other than speculating. But I'm not necessarily certain that is the case here. The weather was extremely bad, as we could see in the footage. But who can tell? Maybe Mossad was taking over their controls, the chopper's control. So it's hard to tell.
It also comes at a dangerous time in Israel-Iran relations. There'll now be a vacuum for 50 days until a president is elected. Will this have an effect on relations between the two countries?
I'm not sure. However, if the West, and led by currently the United States, if they're wise, I think they should absolutely take advantage of this vacuum in order to supply with. We have to understand that the Iranian regime is despised and loathed first and foremost by the Iranian people. And if the West is wise, I think that should be precisely the right time in order to energize and to boost Iranian protesters' spirit, so they can further dethrone the Ayatollah regime. Absolutely.
Speaking of the Ayatollah, he holds the real power in Iran. Do you think that the death of Raisi or the election of a new president will change anything in the country?
Unfortunately, not much. We're going to keep in mind that even when one person as high ranking as he is, like the president of the country, even if he is gone, just as I said earlier, he is not the supreme ruler here. He's just literally he's literally a dummy held, or a puppet held in the supreme leader. The supreme leader is the puppeteer. He's the one should be removed. He's the one should be assassinated if ever we want to see a true and dramatic change in the Iranian country.
And lastly, some Iranians are celebrating on social media. What do you make of that?
Well, I think they're just unloading their frustration. I mean, yes, indeed, they're joyful. Not only in Iran, I think in many Western countries, this joy is natural, is welcome. We have to understand that the Iranian regime was crushing with an iron fist the Iranian people, and I think it only makes sense and very natural indeed that they're very happy about that news that President Raisi is gone.
One last little question I just want to squeeze in. The Iranian foreign minister was also killed. Will this have any impact on Iranian foreign policy also with regards to Israel?
I'm not sure. Iran's policy is very clear. They want to take over Islam. They want to take over the Middle East. We can see their policy very clear. They will keep supplying the Houthis in Yemen. They will keep. We also have to keep in mind they will keep pursuing the nuclear policy and the ballistic missile policy. I don't see any withdrawal about their plan. It is their key element for survival of the Iranian survival is just to further push their nuclear program. So they will be guaranteed their reign for everlasting, as far as they can help it.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was Idan Ronen. He's a journalist and Middle East researcher. To other news now. In Saudi Arabia, King Salman is receiving treatment in hospital for a lung infection. The royal court issued a statement on Sunday providing an update on the king's health after he underwent a series of tests at the royal clinics of Al Salman Palace in Jeddah due to high fever and joint pain. His son, Crown Prince Mohammed Salman, has postponed a trip to Japan due to the health condition of the king. 3 weeks ago, the 88-year-old went to the King Faisal Specialist Hospital in Jeddah for what the royal court described as routine tests. In recent years, the king has been hospitalized several times. In 2020, he underwent a colonoscopy and underwent surgery to remove his gallbladder. In 2022, he was admitted to hospital to undergo a series of tests and to change the battery of his pacemaker. King Salman, 88 years old, has been on the throne since 2015. 2 years later, his son, 38-year-old Mohammed bin Salman, was named Crown Prince and carries out most of the roles and responsibilities for his father. With the help of his son, who's working to prepare Saudi Arabia for a post-oil future, the king has implemented several bold social and economic reforms during his reign. Prince Mohammed has also overseen an intense crackdown on dissent that analysts say has helped him consolidate power. In India, as voting enters the last stages of the 6-week elections, an activist from the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's party in Kashmir has been shot and killed. According to police, the victim was a local leader of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. Aijaz Ahmad was gunned down by suspected rebels in the Shopian district. Kashmiri BJP officials have announced plans to protest the attack. Our BGTN India correspondent Venkat Narayan has more on that story.
Until 5 years ago, jobless Aijaz Ahmed was pelting stones at Indian soldiers in Kashmir and earning 500 rupees or $6 a day. In 2019, Prime Minister Narendra Modi cancelled disputed Kashmir's temporary autonomy and made it a permanent part of India. This led to dramatic changes in Kashmir. Decades of violence came to an end and millions of tourists began flocking to Kashmir, also known as Switzerland of Asia. Ahmed joined Modi's ruling party and soon became head of his village. In videos that went viral, he began praising Modi for changing lives of Kashmiris for the better. On Saturday night, he was shot dead by suspected rebels who also seriously injured a tourist couple in a bid to sabotage the ongoing parliamentary election across India. However, elections will take place as scheduled in Kashmir on Saturday. Venkat Narayan for BGTN, reporting from New Delhi from India.
And in England, thousands of South Africans have cast their votes in London ahead of the country's May 29th elections. Voting at the South African High Commission on London's iconic Trafalgar Square opened at 7 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. 25,000 expat community members are eligible to vote. Well, join us now from London is BGTN's Hayley Bentley with more on that story. Hello, Hayley.
Hi, Juliet. Yes, London has a massive South African expat community, and this could clearly be seen this past weekend where masses of South Africans were lining the streets to cast their votes. Now, as you said, voting started at 7 a.m. and already by 9 a.m., hundreds of people were snaking through the streets of London past the famous London landmark to cast their vote. And people were dressed in South African rugby shirts, in scarves. Others were draped in the South African flag. And you could hear South African music blaring from many people in the queue. And it really felt like a carnival atmosphere. The mood was of celebration and of patriotic pride. And this definitely felt like the biggest turnout for a South African election.
Tell us more about the atmosphere over the weekend.
So most of the people that I spoke to said that they were coming to vote because they believe that the ANC, now that's South Africa's ruling African National Congress party, had failed in every aspect of good governance. And people told me they had become disillusioned and disheartened with the way the country was run. And they were fearful for the future of South Africa. And people told me that they believed that poverty had become worse under this government and that they believed the country was falling to bits with high levels of crime and failing infrastructure. So the general feeling amongst most people here is that the ANC needs to lose power. However, most people I spoke to were actually voting for different parties who were standing in this elections. There were people who were still going to vote for the ANC because they believed that they were concerned about if the ANC loses power, who could take its place.
What have the voters been saying about the current state of South Africa?
So for many South Africans that I've been speaking to, they believe that this is a watershed moment for South Africa. And that's because for the first time since Nelson Mandela became the country's first post-apartheid president 30 years ago, the South African ANC, the African National Congress, South Africa's ruling party, could actually lose power. And they believe that there are a few opposition parties who are gaining mass support among South Africans. And they believe that the time where South Africans would just blindly vote for the ANC might be over. And so that's why there's been such a huge rallying call here in London for South African expats to come to the polls and to cast their votes, because they believe that this election could prove to be such a defining moment for South Africa's future.
Thank you, Hayley. That was our BGTN correspondent from London.
Round 3. Let's go. Right hand on 3 for Super.
Hello, I'm Yolanda Pondo with your BRICS Sports News. Heavyweight boxing sensation Tyson Fury is licking his wounds following Sunday night's fight against Alexander Usyk in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Despite dominating the early rounds of their undisputed heavyweight clash, Fury lost after a split decision to the Ukrainian boxer. Usyk was declared the winner and crowned the undisputed heavyweight champion. Fury, who now marks the loss as his first in 36 professional bouts, failed in his bid to clinch the 4 belts. The first time the heavyweight unification fight has been contested since 1999. Fury gave up his WBC belt to Usyk, who already held the IBF, WBA and WBO titles. But will he stand by the rematch clause in the contract for the fight? Joining me in studio is our sports reporter, Ben Ricoto, for more on the Tyson and Usyk fight. Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Firstly, is it a surprise that the Gypsy King lost the fight?
I think if one looks at the Gypsy King, he has never been knocked out. I think the last time when we saw him on the floor was when he fought against the American Deontay Wilder. Somebody coming into this fight, 37, with no loss, you don't expect him, but a split decision and fighting against Usyk, who's coming into the ring, WBA, WBO, IBF title belt. This one, he was coming with only 1 belt. Most people were expecting the Ukrainian to do well. Some of us were expecting him to do very well. But the Gypsy King, the chatting, the nonsense in between, he gave that fight the hype. I think for me, he came with that and he was talking too much. And we could see that maybe he was not prepared for this one.
Well, there are talks of a rematch and Usyk says he's ready. Why do you think Fury is being very evasive about this rematch?
Look, he's got nowhere to hide. Whether he goes back to London or he goes back to Ireland, he's got nowhere to hide because the agreement, there is a rematch clause. Whether Usyk won the fight or the Gypsy King won the fight, there is a rematch clause. That rematch clause is there, whether they'll fight before December, but I'm thinking before the end of the year, we might see the Gypsy King dancing again with Usyk. But pay special attention. There is this man called Turki Al-Sheikh. He's the head of Saudi, the General Entertainment Authority of the Saudi Arabian government. Sort of in this country, we call them Minister of Sport. This is the guy who's bringing everybody to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi has shown us that instead of having these big fights in the Sin City, maybe in Vegas, it can happen in Saudi as well.
And then what's next for Usyk?
Oh, you hit the ceiling. He has hit the ceiling, in my opinion. You got 4 belts. If you remember, our own Dricus du Plessis, he won the UFC middleweight champion. He came back with a belt. That belt is heavy. This boy is carrying 4. So I don't know what else for him to prove. I think it's just to beat the Gypsy King for the second time. If he can do that for the second time, I think it will open a door for Anthony Joshua. I think Anthony Joshua, when you look at this one, he's watching with keen interest. And the next champion for me, watch Anthony Joshua.
Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
I'll have more BRICS sports news tomorrow. For now, take a look at what's coming to BGTN soon.
Hi, I'm Ava. I think you should watch BGTN TV because it's the best.
We'll be back tomorrow with the latest BRICS news. Until then, you can visit our website and social media for updates.